Welcome back. We have been talking about Russia's interference with the election for over a year now. This week, for the first time, criminal charges. That was just on Monday, but like so many times over the last 12 months, what happens on Monday seems like ancient history by Friday, so let's recap. President Trump's former campaign chair and his deputy were indicted on conspiracy and other charges. Another campaign aide pled guilty to lying to the FBI. A former Tampa man mowed down pedestrians in New York City, killing 8 in the name of ISIS. And Republicans released their long-awaited plan for tax reform, and the stakes for them and the president could not be higher. So what are folks thinking on the Suncoast? Joining us for more is Rod Thompson, president of the Sarasota Republican Club, Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party, and Jacob Ogles, political editor of SRQ magazine. And Rod, I want to start with you because now we have indictments. We have one guilty plea. And take the temperature, if you can, of Suncoast Republicans who I know in the past have not cared so much about this entire topic. But when you see criminal charges, does that start to change?
Yeah, no, in a sense, yes, but not in the way you might expect. So the Manafort charges, are all of those are, back when you're talking about tax and laundering, money laundering, that sort of thing, all before the Trump campaign.
But you know what the game is there. You start
of course,
with
you
things
want to
like
flip
that.
him.
Yes, exactly.
Sir, I understand that, and that's the real game with Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos, who's this volunteer. There was one meeting. I saw the picture of that meeting, and it's like, oh, the president was in a meeting in a dumpy little room like that. No wonder he doesn't remember it. So
this is the president who boasts about having the best memory of anyone. in
he boasts about a lot of
history.
things. We went around that before too. But here's what I think. If you're talking about taking the temperature of the Republicans on this, and that's how much that came out in Mueller's information, in the information dump with these, that actually starts pointing to a much broader net he has cast, which is absolutely capturing now Democrat Party and Clinton operatives, which we can get into more. But what this suggests is it actually gives Republicans like me a little bit of comfort, since his staff is so heavily stacked with Democrat lawyers investigating it, that maybe he's actually going to do an honest investigation. That's what we really want. Manafort always thought he was dirty. There could be others. Flynn, I don't know what that's going to be. But I've always thought it was way broader and way beyond just Republicans. And if he gets to that, that's a good and honest thing.
Cheryl, what is the impact, you think, on local politics and the midterm elections that are coming up? Do you think that this does help create an atmosphere where Democrats can hope for things that have not happened in a long time?
I think it adds to what Democrats are already feeling. I mean, we're about at the 1-year anniversary time of the dark Wednesday morning. And yes, it's not good news for the country, and we don't exult in good news or bad news for the country, but it does speak to the man we elected. It speaks to his judgment. It speaks to his vetting ability. It speaks to knowing who's in your cabinet. It speaks to whether you have a memory or not. It's just more ammunition that Donald Trump is not the guy we want to see leading the country.
Jacob, big picture, what kind of impact does this have on politics on the Suncoast and basically where voters are at?
Well, on the Suncoast, I don't know. This is still a relatively conservative area. I know we've seen a lot of districts have big swings in special elections. We'll see how the one goes here that's happening for the State House soon. That might be a greater indicator. It's still a little bit hard to measure what the political fallout of this is, particularly because we're so early. I mean, right now, these indictments that we're referencing are all campaign officials. It's not actually members of the administration that work for Donald Trump's cabinet. If it extends and starts bringing people like that down, that's going to add a lot more problem.
You did have some discussion yesterday about Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, turning over documents to the FBI.
And you're hearing discussion about Sessions right now, particularly with that testimony during his confirmation. I suspect that's more, as was referenced earlier, an effort to make him flip. I think that you could see this reach into the administration. If it does, if you start seeing indictments of actual members of the administration, it's going to have much greater consequence. It won't be as easy to dismiss.
All right. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the week in Washington right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. We're talking about the week in Washington, and joining us for more is Rod Thompson, the president of the Sarasota Republican Club, Cheryl Wilson, the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party, and Jacob Ogles, political editor of SRQ magazine. We're going to stay on Russia for just one moment because We know, Jacob, that this is a highly Republican area and the president has a lot of supporters here. But nationwide, according to a new Washington Post ABC News poll, a big majority of Americans approve of the Mueller investigation. They believe that they trust him and they are generally inclined to trust Mueller and the case he has made so far, an investigation that the president believes to this day is a hoax.
Well, I've got to tell you, and something we were talking about at the break, this Mueller investigation is very zeroed in on Trump, so it's going to make a lot of news. And Trump is very defensive about it. But I actually think there's a whole lot more attention than there should be on just the Trump aspect of Russia collusion. I don't think there's nearly enough talk about what the Kremlin was trying to achieve here, either by reaching out or issuing all these Facebook ads. And there ought to be a lot more analysis of that, absent of whether it helped Trump or not.
You know, Rod, there was a story this week that the Justice Department, not part of the Mueller investigation, is considering indicting 6 Russians for interference. That's not part of the Trump probe per se. So it is something that the Justice Department is taking seriously.
Right, and they should be. I think Jacob's right. I think that there's a whole lot more to it. Obviously, there's an importance in focusing on what is involving the President of the United States. However, I think there's been an overemphasis on that because it's this particular president. I think what we really need to see, what would be good service to the country, is if there was a lot of in-depth reporting and analysis on what Russia was doing, what the DOJ is investigating there, what they were trying to accomplish. Because I think what it was trying to undermine our democracy, irrespective of party.
Sure, I want to give
Which
you a
is
chance.
something, I mean, that's something that he has done in Eastern Bloc countries for years. You've seen Putin interfering with European elections.
Did it in the French one, too.
Right, but Cheryl, you know,
Cheryl wants to weigh in.
My conservative friends will sometimes point out to me, but you know what? We did this to other countries as well.
We have heard that from the
So what are we
president as
complaining
well.
about?
We have heard that from the president as well. You know, there are bad guys and good guys on each side of the situation, but this is the president that's in a position to do something with the information that he got. This is a president who benefits from any information that he gets. I agree that what we're hearing locally is people who are concerned about the effect on our democracy, the people who are concerned about the effect that Russia or any country interfering in our democracy might have. And that I think is not lost on the people that are paying attention.
While we're talking about democracy, let's talk about Donna Brazile.
Did I lead into that one?
Yes,
huh?
you did. Thank you. Former interim chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, who is out with a book where she says that the DNC was in the bag for Hillary Clinton in her primary against Bernie Sanders. And she says it was not illegal. Hillary bailed out the DNC in terms of money, but in return got control of the party apparatus while she was in a primary fight. I have a couple of questions. Number one, you know, Bernie supporters felt that they did get a raw deal the entire time. That's number one. Number two, why can't the Democrats get their act together? You know, you have a president who is lagging in the polls, the possibility of a good midterm. Why can't the Democrats get on message?
That's, I'm not here to defend Donna Brazile, and I'm not here to defend the performance of the Democratic Party in that election. I have been saying to our team here locally for over a year, let's get over it, let's move forward. Now I'm ready to say, let's have it out. If we're going to have this battle, let's have it, and then let's get over it. As I said in the earlier segment, we are 1 year from what turned out to be a disastrous election, not only for the Democratic Party, but for the democratic process, for what's happening in our country. And we are 1 year from an election where we can begin to make some amends to that and come into it, and yet we're bickering within the party. Now, again, if what Donna Brazile has discovered in September of this year is accurate, it is embarrassing, it is angering, it is frustrating to those of us who are out there working for the Democratic Party. But I would say to Donna Brazile, if she were sitting right here, you were the chair, madam. If you felt that this was going on and you were questioning, why do you have to go to Brooklyn? Step up and be the chair of the party. I have to do that locally on much smaller issues. You're not going to make everybody happy. So step up and be the chair. If you knew what was going on, you should have stopped it.
Rod?
I think what it suggests, too, is that actually there's much more of a civil war in the Democratic Party than has been realized going along. We know there's been fractions in the Republican Party for quite a while. My personal opinion, as I've mentioned before, is the Republican Party actually has broader views represented within it, so you're going to have a lot more friction going on when you have somebody from Collins to Rand Paul. That's a pretty broad range there within
You have
the party.
Republican senators calling the president incompetent.
All right, but aside from that, I mean, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, you've got all sorts of things going on there within the Republican Party. What is often lost, and if it wasn't for Donna Brazil here, there would be zero coverage, is that you have major fractures within the Democratic Party. You have the Bernie Sanders wing, which is a rising wing, a powerful wing, and it's a communist wing. It is overtly and openly. It is. I mean, what about Bernie Sanders' background is not communistic? He got married in the Soviet Union. He sings communist songs. He's an overt socialist, so it's only half a step to communism from there. And you have the Antifa portion, which isn't part of the Democratic Party.
No, it isn't.
It is not, but it is on the left.
And you know, the state Democratic Party, the Florida Democratic Party, met just this past weekend and passed for the first time in general session a series of resolutions on what the party was going to be standing for going into the 2018 election. We saw more unity at that convention than we have seen since this election.
Jacob, there is still this push and pull in terms of the Bernie supporters there who, to Election Day, some of whom said they were Bernie or bust.
Yes.
And they do not trust the whether it's the Florida Democratic Party or the Democratic National Committee. There's still that friction and purging going on. And does that really make the Democrats' job more difficult to gain traction in Florida?
Of course it does, and it's really rather astounding to me how much of a fight people are willing to have, how much of their nose they're willing to carve off despite their face. But I also have to say, this whole issue that was brought up by Brazil, it's significant, but it also strikes me as the Inflategate of democratic politics. Yes, it's embarrassing, it's wrong, and somebody ought to be held to account, but it also probably didn't have that big an effect on who was the ultimate nominee. Hillary Clinton won the Democratic primary with about 3.5 million votes.
Yeah, and Bernie Sanders did have a lot of money to run that primary.
And Bernie had the same financial agreement with the party that the Clinton campaign did.
Right.
He just lacked power.
One other issue, you know, the Republicans rolled out their tax reform proposal yesterday. There is a lot of skepticism about whether or not this can get passed, considering the president's relationship with certain United States senators from his own party. But Rod, you wanted to point out to me, despite all of this yesterday, a new Pew Research Center poll came out that despite persistent low levels of public satisfaction with their government, a lot of Americans still believe that they are either living the American dream or can soon get to the American dream.
Right, and more importantly, not still do, actually do now. 3 years ago, CNN did the same poll on the American dream, and that 60% of them, of the respondents then said that they did not see any way that they could succeed in the American dream. Now, the Pew Research Foundation has done the poll now. They find 82% of Americans say they either have achieved or are on their way to achieving the American dream.
Who do you credit that to?
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking, because I see the same polls you do that say we're going in the wrong direction, you know, Washington's a disaster, the government's failing us, etc. And I think people separate the question. One is, how's government doing? How's our nation doing and all? And a lot of people are not great on that, but personally, they think they're doing pretty well.
Because we have less than a minute left, because there's this other poll I wanted to get to. According to Bloomberg, Americans are officially freaking out. A majority of more than 3,400 Americans polled, 59% say that they consider this to be the lowest point in our nation's history.
They don't know the Civil War.
I think it's just like what you alluded to earlier. The indictments came back Monday, and we feel like that's old news now. There's an event or a big announcement coming up all the time. So you go to sleep thinking one thing, and you wake up thinking that something else is going to be the threat. So absolutely, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of unpredictability in our government. There's a government that's not getting much done.
We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts when we return. Welcome back. There's some major breaking Florida political news that we have got to get to, and that concerns a Republican running for governor, Senate Appropriations Chairman Jack Latvala, who's from Pinellas County, who is being accused by 6 women in Tallahassee of sexual harassment. The Senate President Joe Negron just called the allegations atrocious and horrendous and has ordered an investigation. Jacob, we are seeing allegations of sexual harassment recently from Harvey Weinstein to Kevin Spacey to Mark Halperin. And now we have one of the major candidates for governor. And it seems, you know, I don't know what will happen with his political campaign, but it's not hard to imagine it will be short-lived.
This has to be the worst political environment for this type of allegation to surface. This is the absolute wrong moment for this news in terms of Jack Latvala's political future. I think that it's very unlikely, because he wasn't even the front runner for governor in the first place, that he's going to be able to politically survive this. I think you're going to see his candidacy end fairly soon, if not his time in Tallahassee as a senator.
What is going on in Tallahassee? Because if you recall, also this week, the Senate Democratic leader was forced to resign from the legislature because of a extramarital affair, show.
He was, and again, it was embarrassing and it was inexcusable. We also saw then, some people believe as a result of that, a change in the reporting of sexual harassment by the victims in the legislative body, how they would report. It went away from HR and it goes now to the Senate leader, the same one that just made his comment. But this just speaks to the big issue that has finally come to the forefront, that has finally exploded. It's not anything that we should be surprised about. We've all known that it was going on. And I applaud the fact that women are speaking up. It's a shame that it has taken this toll and it takes so long to get it there.
Rod, what is happening not only in Tallahassee, but there have been also stories from women in Congress saying that they have had to deal with these issues as members of Congress.
Right. So I think what's happening is actually a good thing, because clearly this has been going on for a long time, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's Congress, whether it's Tallahassee. This has been going on for a long time. I'm of the opinion of sort of a zero tolerance policy when it comes to these sorts of things between men and women. In the 90s, I was kind of called prudish for that, but actually I think that that's a real good way to do it. And I think that as these revelations come forward, that we should see a much, much higher standard going forward, and that would be good.
All right, and we'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on the GOP tax cut plan. The details were released yesterday. Married taxpayers earning between $45,000 to $200,000 will have a tax rate of 25%. Couples earning between $500,000 to $1 million a year will pay almost 40%. Some popular deductions important to middle-income families are out, like the deductions for medical expenses, student loan interest, tax prep expenses, moving expenses, unreimbursed employee expenses, lifetime learning credits, and employer-provided child care credits. Here's what some of you have to say. Kevin says, another bill written in secret with no public hearings and only lobbyists having access to lawmakers. Michael says, so the working class loses deductions and the wealthy lose tax responsibility. I don't think that is how it is supposed to work. And Mike says, simplify the tax code so everyone doesn't have to pay to have their return filed. Simply do it yourself. Success. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And just a reminder, if you want to stay up to date on the latest local breaking news, just see our alerts on your phone instantly. iPhone and iPad users, you will need to download our new news app. Just go to the App Store and search for WWSB or My Suncoast. Android users, no problems. You'll get the new version automatically. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Rod Thompson is the president of the Sarasota Republican Club. Cheryl Wilson is the chairwoman of the Manatee County Democratic Party. And Jacob Ogles is the political editor of SRQ Magazine.